So I use my phone to dictate. You know, you speak and it writes the text. So I'm like working on the phone, and then eventually I was going to, you know, email it to myself and transfer it on the iPad. So I worked for an hour, and I'm so happy and excited, right? Reading all about happiness this morning again and all that. And I'm like, okay, maybe time to go just grab a quick breakfast and then go back. And as I was doing that, I erased everything that I did in 1 second. Erased everything. I'm like, okay, this is a test because I'm supposed to maintain happiness. So I'm like, maybe I should go get breakfast. That's gonna make me happy. So I did go, you know, grab breakfast with some of the Sheikh, and alhamdulillah, it did make me happy. Breakfast was very good, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So the topic itself requires a long time for us to discuss, to be honest with you. How do you attain happiness, right? And then, what is happiness? In order for us to attain something, we have to understand what it means. See, happiness means different things to different people, right? So if you were to ask a single brother, what is happiness? He will tell you that happiness is what? Single brothers here, raise your hands. You know, some people are so single and miserable that they don't even realize they're single. They don't even know what I'm talking about. Like, single, is he talking about, does that apply to me? Yeah. Okay. Single brothers, raise your hands. Right? A lot of single people think that happiness means what? What is happiness to you? What's your name? Mohammed Harith. He's single, ladies. Alright. So, what does happiness mean to you? What makes you joyful, makes you smile, brings happiness to your heart, gives you that tingling feeling in your belly? Getting married, takbir! He's very honest, jazakallah khair, you know, so happiness is getting married. You talk to some married people, and happiness means something totally different. Anyone wants to volunteer? Any married person? Very happy in their marriage? So what happens once you get married? Khalas, you made it to happiness? The land of happiness. Dar al-Sa'ada. I have arrived. Right? You tell couples that don't have children, what is happiness to you? They're like, oh, have as many children as possible. You talk to parents that have children, what is happiness to you? It's like, when my children start behaving, that's happiness. So happiness means different things to different people. But very often, happiness is confused with joy, pleasure. A lot of people say, this makes me happy, that makes me happy. That's not the happiness we're talking about. That is not happiness in its true meaning. That is just joy or pleasure. And pleasure and joy are part of happiness, but they're not happiness. Right? Research shows, this has been proven now by scientists, but it's already determined in our tradition long time ago, that true happiness has to do with pleasure and joy, yes, but it's something bigger than that. It must involve engagement, and it must involve sense of purpose. So deep joy / pleasure that engages the person with his own or her own reality, and that fulfills a purpose. It's that experience. That is happiness. Like you find in the work of, because scientists initially used to define happiness as subjective well-being. So the best judge of your own happiness is you. You can, so some people say, I'm happy. And they're true, they're happy. Not in its true sense, but they're happy because at that moment, right, they're listening to something that makes them laugh, or they're hanging out with somebody that makes them feel good about themselves, right? Or they have that material thing that they believe will make them happy. But is that true happiness? No. Because the moment that pleasure expires or ends, and every pleasure, especially physical pleasure, comes to an end. It doesn't last forever. They go back into misery. Right? As a matter of fact, physical pleasure is the least significant and the weakest of the three layers of pleasure, the three levels of pleasure that I talk about. There are three different levels of pleasure. There is a physical pleasure, something that you feel, or touch, or taste, or hear. But there is also something that you feel. That is a little more deeper. The emotional pleasure is by far greater and more intense than the physical pleasure. But guess what? There is even another level of pleasure that is much more meaningful, that actually lasts longer. It lasts longer. It's much more intense, and that is the spiritual pleasure. What do I mean by that? Physical pleasure. You think of something that you all enjoy, something that you really like, that brings you happiness. Give me something that a lot of people enjoy. Anything. It could be a drink. Chocolate, right? Chocolate. Chocolate or chocolate, depending what kind of chocolate. I mean, anything. White chocolate, dark chocolate, anything? Any chocolate. What do you like? What kind of chocolate? Danish? English? What's your favorite chocolate? Chocolate milk. Chocolate milk. That is his favorite type of chocolate. So some people have chocolate. You remind me of my son, by the way. Right? Oh my God, I can't wait to have it. Can I have it? And then the minute they have it, they're enjoying it. You can actually sometimes hear people enjoy something that they're longing for, especially if they haven't had it for a long time, right? They're like drinking it and they're like, oh, this feels good. Have you ever seen people, right? Right? Yes? No? Ice cream? Sometimes it happens. People are enjoying it. But what happens after you have a load of it? Let's say you have 1 or 2 or 3. If it's like liquid, cups. If it's chocolate, you have 3 bars of it. That's it. You get tired of it. Right? You can't have any more. What happens if you finish it? You're like, oh, that was good. But that's where it ends. Right? But how about emotional pleasure? Emotional pleasure is something that you enjoy when you're experiencing it. But guess what? Every time you remember that moment, or something, or someone that reminds you of it, it brings joy to your heart. You feel the pleasure, right? If you love your child, and I assume that everyone should love their children, right? Or if you love your spouse, or your brother, or your sister, when you look at them, it brings joy to your heart, right? That pleasure continues. It's deeper. It's more intense. It lasts longer. But what is even more intense and much more meaningful is the spiritual pleasure.